So, thank you very much for listening. We are here in Highfield Park, in these woodlands, in these trees, and can anybody tell me what season it is? What season?
Autumn.
Autumn. Everybody think autumn?
Autumn.
How do you know it's autumn? Yes?
Because the leaves are fell off the trees.
The leaves are falling off the trees, and so I'm going to tell you a story of why the leaves fall down from the trees in the autumn. So, can you do this? If I say crick, can you say crack? Crick.
Crack.
Crick.
Crack.
Crick, crick, crick.
Crack, crack, crack.
Oh, good. Crickety, crickety, crick.
Crack, crack, crack.
Crick, crick, crickers.
Crick, crick, crack, crack, crickers.
Once upon a time, the trees in these forests, they kept their leaves all year round, which was great if you were a squirrel or a bird like a robin, because the leaves would be on the trees and they could hide up in the tops of the trees, and it was lovely in spring and summer like the leaves are on the trees now, but also in the autumn and the winter. But if you were really little, a creature that lives underneath the trees, there'd be no brown leaves to hide, to shelter, to keep warm. Can you tell me a kind of little creepy crawly creature that lives underneath the trees? Cockroach is fantastic. Anything else?
Worms.
Worms, centipedes, spiders, woodlice, beetles, and all those little tiny creatures.
Spiders.
And they lived underneath the
Tarantulas.
trees. But because the trees kept their green leaves, there was nowhere to hide and nowhere to stay warm. And when it came to autumn and it was starting to get chilly, they started to shiver and they started to moan, and they went to the king of the mini beasts, which was a very busy, stripy, bumbly kind of creature. Who knows what that was?
A bee.
What kind of bee?
A
A bumblebee! And the bumblebee was the biggest of the mini beasts, and he got all the earwigs and spiders and the little things together, and he said,
They even talk.
they speak. Do you speak bumblebees?
No.
See if you can understand what I just said.
But my dad does.
Listen again.
Don't worry.
Everybody, you speak bumblebees. And the bumblebee gathered the people and said, don't worry, I know what we're going to do. We are going to go and find the big brown bear, because the big brown bear, he hibernates in winter. Where does he think he goes when he's hibernating?
Cave.
Inside a cave. Perfect, Patrick. He got himself together with his big warm bear coat, and he looked at all the little spiders and beetles and mini beasts and insects and cockroaches and worms, and he said, hey little ones, you can come and live in my brown furry jacket, and I'm going to go in the cave and give myself a big bear hug.
Wait, does it mean that he's gonna eat them?
No, he's going to keep them warm. Give yourself a bear hug. Like that. And can you say, I love sleep? Try that.
I love sleep.
And so the bear got all the mini beasts in his furry jacket, and he went inside the cave, and he was sleeping till about 7:30. And about 7:30, he opened up an eye, and he opened up another eye, and then use your fingers here, because the little mini beasts that were inside his fur jacket, they started to wriggle and jiggle and tickle. Let's try it. Wriggle and jiggle and tickle. And, and the bear, he came out of the cave, and he stood up, and he went, I can't bear it anymore. And so all the mini beasts, they flew out of the fur coat of the bear and back onto the ground, and the leaves were still on the trees, so it was all cold and it was all dry, there was nowhere to hide. And then the big mini beast king, the bumblebee, he said,
Don't worry, everybody.
exactly, I know what we need to do. We need to go and see the birds, because some of the birds, they do eat insects, but they also fly south for the winter. And there were swifts and swallows and house martins. Can you say that with me? Swifts and swallows and house martins. And they looked at the little mini beasts, the spiders and the crabs and the beetles and the woodlice, and they said, jump on our backs and jump on our wings, and we will fly south where it's warm in the winter. And all the birds were covered in ants and beetles and spiders, and their whole wings were covered, and they lifted up their wings and they said, here we go, trucks away, ready to fly, off we go. Oh, sorry, I'll try again. Off we go.
They can't fly because it's too heavy.
They couldn't fly because all those insects were too heavy. It's exactly
Try
right.
one at a time.
Well, if they could try one at a time, but it would take so long to go thousands of miles. And so all the spiders and the mini beasts and the beetles and the caterpillars and the worms, they come off the bodies of the birds onto the ground where it was dry and cold and the leaves were still on the trees. But in those days, people lived in these woods, and they had fires in the woods, and they sat round the fire, and they kept their toes warm, and they toasted their sandwiches, and they looked at those little beetles and mini beasts and crabs and spiders and cockroaches, and they said, come and stay by our fire and get yourself nice and warm. And for a while, imagine just being a woodlouse by the fire. It was lovely, and it kept them warm. But what would happen after a while if you got too... They would burn. And their little legs were getting hot and their little bodies were getting cracked, and it was too hot and they had to crawl away from the fire and back into the cold. And now the king of the mini beast, the bumblebee, he said, I'm sorry, everybody.
I'm sorry, everybody.
I don't know what to do.
I don't know what to do.
Everybody cry.
Everybody cry.
And that's what they did, all the tiny little mini beasts with tiny little tears on the tiny little faces. And it was so terrible that suddenly they looked up and they heard a sound. Listen. We can help. We can help. Say it with me. We can help. We can help. Who was it speaking? We can help. The wind in the... We can help. The wind in the trees, in the leaves. And suddenly the tree said, we can help. And they turned their leaves from green to gold to brown to down on the ground. Let's try it together. From green to gold to brown to down on the ground. And suddenly there was a lovely layer. Look over the forest there. There was a lovely layer of green, gold and brown leaves. And the mini beasts, the woodlice and the spiders, they tucked in like being in a duvet of your bed back at home. And they were so happy inside their duvet of leaves. They stayed all the way through the winter until quarter to April. And at quarter to April, they opened their eyes and they looked up and they watched as the trees... Can you put some branches out for me? Use your hands as branches. Come on, we're going to branch out here. Ha ha. And they turned their branches into buds and into green leaves like this. Are you ready? And they grew new green leaves. And that's why it is. Every autumn, the trees, in kindness, they lose their leaves so that the mini beasts have got somewhere nice and warm to stay. But all through the winter, they stay there underneath the trees, and in the spring, they grow new green leaves. So it must be a tree story. And that is the end of that. Can you end the story with me? Let's do it together. You ready? And that is the end of that. Thank you for listening.